Hey everybody, welcome to Clutch or Kick. I was about to say Plat Chat. Whoops. Clutch or Kick episode 6. That's the muscle memory kicking in. If you're just joining us, you're like, oh, who are these new faces? Well, we brought back Wyatt because, well, he's in the house and he watches a lot of Valorant and he's got some good ideas. And you know, he's been cooking up some new material for you in the lab. And of course, we brought on Avast as well. This guy. I mean, we weren't even recording. He's already been cracking jokes. So, I mean, this is going to be a banger of an episode. Also, Avast is, I'm going to say you're a self-proclaimed Valorant expert already.
Self-proclaimed, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Proclaimed by you.
Is it self-proclaimed if I proclaim it?
This other person that's now put it out there, but you know, I'll put myself. You know, I'll agree with it. Why not?
Yeah, I think you've been following the scene for quite some time, and all of us have a background in esports where we've just been literally we know the patterns, we know how this industry works, and we're providing the know-how and the knowledge and the information, and we're about to break down the first topic, which is the patch notes 1.04, which is the new patch that came out. What did this entail? I actually can't quite remember. Did they make more changes to Viper?
They did.
Is this the Viper buff one? Yeah. This is the one where they did buff Viper.
Yummy.
And not to jump too far in the topic list, but it did allow us to see Viper once in a tournament on one map. Boy. Buff's really paying dividends for her playtime. Went from 0% to 0.09%.
Well, this patch wasn't actually played, though, was it? I think this patch hasn't even...
Oh, really?
No.
Wait.
So this patch was not what the... I'm pretty sure this was not what the PAX Invitational was.
Really? It wasn't even in then?
So.
Hold on.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. Looking at it right now. Hey, let's
analysis you can only get here on Clutch or Kick. I don't even know what the hell's going on.
It doesn't say, and that's what makes it so weird. And
pretty sure it
operates differently to Overwatch, because Overwatch always announces the patches after they hit the game anyway. So it always confuses me. But I swear that I saw Raze and Brim still with 6 points in their ults.
Yeah, that's the thing, because the ult changes went out too, and the points we could still see on the broadcast. And I'm pretty sure I never saw 7-point ults for Orbital Strike or Showstopper.
Okay, yeah, these are just these are minor quality of life changes that they're adding onto Viper. Some nerfs to Brimstone and Raze. As well. Yep, so the ult point increase, I think that's quite reasonable. When I saw Raze nerfs in the patch note preview, I was like, oh god, please don't touch the satchel jumps. Like the one fun thing that's in Raze's kit, which you can do with it, is the satchel jumps. And Riot Morello actually posted a tweet saying they're not touching, I think he called it the zooming function of the satchel pack. So that's
he did
good.
say, he said it was like this whole thing's blown up about Killjoy, right? And like the whole design of Valorant having abilities.
You want to jump into Killjoy now?
No, I don't want to jump into it now, but I just want to, because it's coming back to Raze, because Morello tweeted something like, oh, even though there are abilities with damage in the game, it's to make you respect them and deal with them. And he said the only things that they're upset about at the moment are people just using the satchel charge to blow other people up. They like the way that it lets you be mobile. So and also the rocket. Like sometimes you just can't do anything about the rocket. It's like, yeah, no shit, it's a fucking rocket.
Yeah, I do like the change to Raze. I think that's a fair place to begin with the ult, rather than just tanking it completely, reducing the damage too heavily. I think just changing it to 7 ult points is a pretty
because teams have gotten so good at dealing with it too. As soon as they hear the voice line, teams have just started just running away entirely or just dropping some utility. Like used to, people were complaining that like you had to give up a site just from the threat, but now teams have gotten good enough to where they can just like drop some utility and then back up a bit, and it's a lot harder to actually get it off because you can just like actually crossfire you so immediately when you
Plus it is pretty hard countered by AWPs, like, because the reason that you can't really kill her with the rifle is because unless you hit the immediate headshot, it's just a one button click for the Raze to be able to fire out the rocket. But it's only one button click for the AWP as well. So it's basically just like whoever hits the button first, and the AWP is already holding the angle. So
well,
a lot of the time you just see them get hit by the AWP and they die.
I'm always favoring the one button click for the pee poo poo op in that scenario. I'm always favoring it there. I mean, what about Brimstone's arms fidelity though? I mean, that's important.
They increased his arm fidelity.
It's arm fidelity. That's a faithful arm.
What does that mean? They made it look better?
I think they optimized the FPS around like the animation essentially, and they made it look a little bit better, perhaps.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
He's a he's a big old American boomer, so he's big into his Second Amendment rights. He wants the right to bear arms, and he wants everyone to see his bare arms. You get bare arms.
I did like how they touched the ults in general, though. The ults in general, I liked adjusting, like the orbital strike too, like bringing it up a little bit because it's such a ubiquitous ult to hold the site.
Dude,
that was a good change.
Yeah, I do like this. I think I don't know why they ever thought that those ults wouldn't be that impactful, but maybe we will start to see as well a lot of ults across the board just kind of retuned. It's an interesting aspect of the game as well because they've combined. I'm sure Riot don't like this when people make the comparisons to CS and Overwatch, but it is quite clear that they've taken inspiration heavily from CS, a little bit from Overwatch, maybe other games like Rainbow Six, but it gives them a lot more variables to tweak and change if they want to balance a character, which is always cool and interesting, actually. I mean, they can change so much around this. And then, just another minor quality of life buff, which is the stim beacon no longer affecting enemies and no longer shows the radius.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I was already seeing people. Did you see these like really nerdy spots that got on the Reddit where people are throwing them on the ceilings so that you couldn't see them? That's like a step too far into Dorkland, where you're like, you do not need to refine your stim beacon usage this much. Yeah. Valorant just needs to make the ability a bit better. If you have to hide them in the rafters of the ceiling in order to get value out of them.
Well, the radius changes made them actually so much better, considering that it's actually disgusting when you'd be playing Brimstone. It's like, I really want to use my stim back today for once instead of just never buying it. And you drop it and you're like playing a corner. And then it's just like, if you could see the radius through the walls at times, it just like defeated the purpose of playing the game. When your radius or your stim pack, it's like, hey guys, everyone group up. And now everyone knows where we're at. So let's just die because my ability told them, hey, here, come kill these guys. So I actually think that's a really big change.
Overall, I think all the changes from this patch were pretty good. I mean, it was nothing too considerable, but I think they were all
the Viper changes are
I was going to say, though, we kind of skipped over the Viper changes.
The biggest change of this
but do we think, do we think that this is going to make Viper more relevant coming into the future?
I definitely think so. I mean, the alt change is kind of whatever.
Huge. I think the ult change is pretty big. Yeah, because it makes the ability for the ult, like, it was already good. Like, that was arguably, like, we can actually get ult up on site, like one of the strongest like ults in the game when you can actually get it up, you know? But I do think that the change where you could actually exit and enter and it goes up to 15 seconds, it changes the dynamic entirely of like how you like push an ult now against a Viper, huge, and how you can use it.
Yeah. The mind games you can play with it.
The problem with Viper's ult, though, is that first of all, it's difficult to actually get in a good position where you're favored. And secondly, if you get it in a good position and all of your teammates are alive, they're frequently left in like, it obscures certain entrances that they want to try and hold. And sometimes it lets the opponents push into places because certain sight lines end up being blocked. It's really hard to be on the team with a Viper and play around her ult. It feels like a very self-centered ultimate. It doesn't really empower the rest of your team at all.
Except when
I don't think that this helps either.
I don't want to ever think about that again. That push. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. That was horrific.
Yeah.
But I do think. Well, I was just going to say that I think the buffing or not a buff necessarily, but they made the red outlines brighter of the enemies if you are the Viper. And the mini-map obstruction, small thing, but I think the red outline buff could actually be fairly significant for the Viper playing inside of it. It'll make it easier for the Viper to hold alone, because there are definitely a lot of situations, I think, where you will see the Viper inside of the alt, and then an enemy is able to not necessarily sneak up on them, but they'll appear rather quickly, and I don't think that the outline was always necessarily striking enough that the reaction time of the Viper wasn't always, I think, as good as it could be. I think that'll just make it easier. I mean, obviously, it'll make it easier for Vipers to get kills on enemies walking inside of the alt, where I think there were situations before where the Viper could get killed by an enemy in the alt.
I have some concerns, I think, with this kind of method of buffing a character like Viper. Because not to discredit like Riot's balancing methods, but I do wonder if they're looking at, like, for one, Viper seems like to me with her kit that it's quite situational in a lot of aspects. Like there's probably a lot of setups that you can do on certain maps that are really quite effective, but on other maps and other areas she's going to be much less effective. And I do wonder, are they looking at like a general win rate across the board? Because these small incremental quality of life buffs that they keep adding and adding and adding and adding, there is a risk that you'll reach a tipping point and eventually she will just go from not really played that much to just unbearable to play against in some scenarios because of how powerful she is.
You don't think that'll happen?
I don't think that's really going to happen though, because they'll just tweak her back. The thing with this game is that it's a lot of 1v1 scenarios, whereas Overwatch is not at all. Like every tiny thing that you change in Overwatch interacts across like different team comps and all different ability usages and all sorts, because it's every time you shoot someone, they're probably in the middle of a team fight. You don't really take 1v1 trades. I feel like you can tweak the numbers much more effectively in Valorant to create like easier balance decisions, just because most of the time you are taking 1v1s, or like if you're taking a 1v2, you're expected to lose it anyway. So it's ridiculous if you're able to win a 1v2 most of the time. So it's like much easier to tell the difference between broken and not broken.
I do find it interesting how they don't ever want, for Viper at least, like, they're making all these small quality of life changes over time incrementally, but they never really want to touch the fact that, like, I feel like for a lot of people, when they don't like Viper, it's because she's just been relegated into like, you are a one site agent, like you walk in, you blow your load on the site and you're done type of thing. Like you're not really like having to be able to bring utility to multiple sites.
Yeah, you don't have nuance.
So I'm wondering why their options here was like they just locked Viper into like a further, like, you are on site. Like, this is here. You are the defensive lineman. You're gonna sit here and you're gonna do your job. And that's what you fucking do, because all they've done is just with the fuel changes, you can have your various smokes up a lot longer, but you still can't move them. You can't put utility into new places. Yeah. So I feel like that's still such a big limiting factor for Viper compared to like other agents that can actually utility elsewhere, outside the site.
Yeah, I think Viper, the overarching issue with Viper is that she just doesn't fit a good role in a team composition. I just don't see what relevant agent would you replace to have Viper and her abilities? I think that's the question, and there isn't one, right?
You would think that her spot would fill in with a smoker, but
right, but why would
every other smoker fills in so many better roles?
You can only smoke one area with her.
Yeah.
The thing.
The other stuff. Weirdly, I think that she could be best used in Sageless comps, replacing the Sage, if she becomes like a true site anchor with these new changes. Because now that you can molly and smoke, and the smoke, when you push through it, you keep the decay for a while as well. So people are less incentivized to push her smokes than anybody else is, apart from maybe Cypher, because you can hear them coming through. But they're really trying to make the smoke like, you should not push a Viper smoke.
Yeah.
And so if she becomes quite a heavy lockdown defensive character, then if you've got some like nice setups for set smokes on attack and set walls, then maybe you could run it with some kind of like Sageless comp. But
then also
you just lose all the other utility of Sage though, right? In that case, like there's still so much value you get from reses and heals and walls, that isn't given by smokes that you can only have in one site. Like Sage, at least you can hold a site with Sage, but then you can go heal someone or res someone elsewhere. Like, can Viper bring any sort of that level of utility anywhere other than one site? Like, no.
Sage's heal is just, to me, I think out of all the abilities in the game, teams get the most value out of Sage's heal the most consistently. I think it's the most consistently valuable ability in the game. It's just so powerful. And I mean, further, when you're talking about lockdown defense, I mean, I don't know if we want to segue into Killjoy, but then also, it seems like if you want to lock down a site, why would you pick Viper over Killjoy? Because Killjoy seems very good for that.
We can talk about Killjoy, and then we'll move into the rank changes, I suppose, as well, because we're on that topic. Killjoy, in the introduction, I know exactly the kind of direction that this conversation is going to go immediately from, I think, everybody here. So I will attempt to play devil's advocate to most of your points that you're making here with Killjoy coming in, because they finally announced it. It got leaked, but it's actually properly announced. We've seen all the abilities. She's got a a boombot that reveals enemies that get triggered. They get triggers over when people walk over it, and it deals vulnerability to them, so they take double damage. She has a turret, this thing, so it's a 180 degrees thing, which, yeah, I mean, it's just going to force people to shift their line of sight over to it to shoot it. Doesn't do much damage, but it is still a 125 HP turret. This is the Molotov that you can choose when to deploy it.
This is absurd. This is the worst ability that she has, and no one's talking about it yet, but it's horrible.
Yeah, and here's the ultimate, where you has 150 HP. It goes through walls, and it says it. What was the language they used?
The language I heard was it detains you, so it's gonna put you in the drunk tank for like when it unlocks it.
Now,
for whatever reason.
In the leaked clip, it showed a Phoenix getting slowed and pulling his knife out when the ult went off. Yeah. Which means I think it disarms you and it slows you. The radius on this fucking thing is half the map.
It disarms you too, right?
It did in the clip.
Right.
I think it does.
We think it does in the clip.
It looked like he didn't even have his knife out. I thought he just went nothing.
No, he had his knife out.
Okay.
Now, granted, that could have been them trying to show us how slow you are when you're moving with your knife out.
That's what I thought the purpose of it was.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
I thought it was that.
Because they haven't been clear with the language.
Right.
Well, that's probably because they also want people to actually test the hero before they make massive judgments on whether or not it's going to be broken.
No, right? I want to make massive judgments now. I don't want to test it.
Like, for example, the turret, someone was saying that they had... I don't know where they got this info from, for starters, because the agent hasn't actually been released.
Tweeted out the numbers.
There was also a leak on like a YouTube channel or whatever that they posted in the Twitter chain that had like some of the values for the damage and the slows and stuff.
Because the turret does piss all damage. Apparently, it does like 12 damage per hit.
It does 8 damage at close range. From 20 meters, it does 6 damage per bullet, and from 35 meters, it does 4 damage per bullet.
So I mean,
the leaks.
We are not talking about a turret that is actually going to be useful at all, except for tagging people potentially and slowing them down, and just for letting you know that someone is there. So it functions a bit more like a tripwire kind of, but with a big cone.
I would say it's like a deadlier tripwire in the fact that, like, you see it even in the video announcement where they're pushing out, they're just pushing through the site from long, and it's sort of just like, well, you have to turn to deal with this turret, because like what happens once you start fighting and this turret is sitting, especially once you're close range, it's holding a corner and it's shooting you for like 8 per bullet, that's a lot of health over time when you're like trading tags.
At the most basic level, it allows, if you're defending a site, the most basic team play in this game is setting up a crossfire. You now have a crossfire as one person. You don't need a teammate. That's what it does at the most basic level of team play, which is a huge ability. And then further than that, it can obviously, if you wanted to solo hold a site, there are positions you can put it in to cover a flank. So if someone's wrapping around, you'll know. I mean, they're not going to take huge damage, right? But they'll either stop to kill the turret, but you'll just hear it firing regardless. You're going to know someone's coming on your flank.
I feel like the majority of the time, though, it will only be used for info. Like, no one's really going to... if you're taking a 1v1, it's not like the boombot though, right? Because you do have to shoot that boombot, because otherwise you are probably going to die. It doesn't seem, at least from first glance, that you are going to have to shoot the turret. Like, you can try and just take the 1v1, and if the guy kites you for a while, then you might have to turn around to kill the turret. But
I'm not gonna lie,
generally you can like hunt out the 1v1 first.
That turret seems like it's gonna suck on pistol rounds.
Oh, yeah,
125 health.
That's the pistol
125
rounds,
health. I think it costs 200. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Did they release? I don't think they've released technically any of like the
values.
I didn't see that.
So,
well,
I was reading through various articles and I couldn't find anything.
We just pulled up the Twitter clip of the leaked footage again, and it does appear that it disarms you. It takes away your gun. So at the end, when the ult comes off, instantly as the ult goes off, Phoenix switches out to his knife. So yeah, Kurt's skipping ahead here. You can see it.
Takes out your ankles and takes out your balls simultaneously.
I'm assuming it goes through walls, because otherwise it's pointless.
It certainly does. I mean, it looks like it does.
If it doesn't go through walls, it is the worst ultimate in the game. If it does go through walls, it's the most annoying ultimate.
It's disgusting.
I'm just imagining like on this map on Ascent, like imagine a team plants on B and they're down in the pit and you're retaking, just set it down behind like where the lever is just set it in front of the lever at boat and just let it rip, and you could just kill everyone on site for free.
Or you just set it really deep in the site, and as they push through those two corridors, they're gonna get disarmed.
On either side, if you have that ult, you just get a free win.
Imagine trying to late push. Like a lot of teams recently have been pushing down to like the final 15 seconds in a round.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to late push into this. You just can't. You just can't.
Like push you into this and the molly on the ground that you can activate at will, and the turret.
Yeah, good luck.
Imagine all three.
I think though you will really struggle to get value out of it as a defender.
You think so?
It feels like something that's going to be great to stop retakes. But if you're defending a site, what's your plan? Like, do you just use it as Viper's Pit and just sling it down at the beginning of the round? You're not going to do that. You have to wait for them to commit to a site.
Well, you can do it through walls. That you can just do it when you're like, you can just essentially just wait for the push to happen and then drop it. You know, if you're in a safe position.
How I imagine you are going to lose. Like, it takes so long to deploy. You'll have already lost the push.
Okay, but how I imagine people playing this character is playing very passive positions on site with setups. So, like, for example, on Ascent A, they play maybe on the Heaven area, and then they let their turret set up a crossfire in the corner. They try and take some shots. They try and get a kill. They back off, and they play retake with their team with the ultimate. That's how I can see it being played. And they've got their Molotov down, so they can literally delay so much. Like the Molotov, we haven't even talked about the Molotov, Josh. You said it's the most broken aspect to this kit. Okay,
yeah, I think it is.
I do want to say a lot of people are heavily criticizing the entire concept of the character because they're like, a turret in my tactical shooter, and it's I think because you've got the huge portion of the player base coming over from CS, and they're just like, they're not on board with any of these type of abilities. If there's a way for them to balance it, even like lowering the HP, I think you'll see the effectiveness of this character go down quite drastically the higher in rank you go. The higher in team play, the higher in coordination you go. I think you'll find less effectiveness. But this Molotov is the real problem for me, because there's already two things in the game that have no outplay potential when you're playing like a retake on a site once they have the bomb down. And that's Brimstone with his Molotov and his ult. And this adds one more factor where you can lay down the Molotov once you've planted the bomb and just wait patiently. And you can just you can just cycle through those pieces of utility, the Brimstone molly, the Killjoy molly, and maybe the Brimstone ult if you've got it, and you just win.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that they can do.
You can shoot it though, is what, because based off the description I heard, it's like when it lands, it goes quiet. So to me, it almost sounds like they've already, based off the description, indicating that there's going to be a way to stop it from being set.
Maybe. You know? I think in the ESPN article, it just said it's invisible once it goes down.
This was from Esports, what I was reading.
I think there's from just discussing this, there's a lot about the hero that we don't know yet. And there's a lot of important variables that could move her from being horrible to being actually a really viable and cool hero. And one of them is that molly needs some counterplay. You need to be able to find it and destroy it if you just walk over it. Because if you just put it down where you planted the bomb, you're never going to be able to defuse that bomb. It's just impossible.
It's just like an orbital strike on cooldown, because it's like does the same thing. You just deny a bomb plant whenever they come in, and then they have to back up it, or not a bomb, but a spike. So whatever.
It must be destroyable. Otherwise, that's a change that they need to make pretty quickly.
It's shocking that the turret seems like possibly the least OP aspect of this character. They're introducing a turret into a tactical shooter. I don't care about the turret. I think they've balanced in just the turret. If you're looking at just that, I think they balanced it pretty well, actually, with the damage and everything. If that was the linchpin of her kit,
it does have 125 HP.
Yeah,
and it's
against the pistols. That might be the only thing. But I think overall, they might tweak it a little bit. But overall, I think they balanced the turret pretty well.
Yeah,
I think for putting a turret in a game like this,
most issues with as well.
Because we haven't even touched on with auto aimers in my FPS. That's what they hate. They're not.
It's just CS players ooga boogieing out around the cave fire and just like they're just like up the turret, like, and they're beating their war drums and stuff and doing their cave paintings and shit. So it's just that's really what it. But the crazy part to me, I feel, for her kit is that there's two like big design decisions with Killjoy that I feel like haven't been addressed. One, turret, I feel like forces you once again to run a Sage, because if you take any sort of poke damage from the turret, then it's like, okay, Sage once again remains pretty strong. And then B, there's been this constant complaint, especially at the professional level, obviously, which is sort of what we're covering. We're not really talking about, party platypus like 22 here and their ranked games necessarily, but like about how there's not enough
22.
How there's not enough utility for like ops in this game, like we feel like there's not enough smokes and not enough flashes compared to like CS versus ops. And all we've done with Killjoy is introduce another like Cypher / pseudo Raze like character that has no utility to deal with ops.
Yeah,
zero.
It's another hard lockdown character rather than really giving you anything.
Which I'm fine with to have an alternative to Cypher, because Cypher has sort of always been a must run so far. But I also think that that's no utility. No extra utility has been added here to deal with the op problem at all. Like zero.
I'm quite happy though that they haven't created a character that's fantastic on defense but has some crazy utility on offense. Outside of the ult being really powerful for retakes, it does seem more like because something that I think a lot of people were worried about is if you add another healer into this game, maybe every team starts playing double healer comps. Or if you add another like heavy defensive lockdown character, maybe every team plays double, like hardcore lockdown comps, and you don't care about your attack, but you're just racking up rounds on defense. But I don't think that that's going to happen, and I kind of like the way that that's going. Is that I feel like if you're going to run Killjoy, she would be a replacement for one of the other heroes that you are normally anchoring a site.
Why?
With.
Because otherwise your comp is too slow.
Because otherwise you don't have enough utility to actually be able to
running Cypher Killjoy. Like what is your comp? Your comp is like the fucking Helm's Deep. Like that's you. Like how do you play on offense when you're running like a double like site control?
And it's also like what you have to think about this as well is it's not like you're going to get 12 rounds on defense if you run a hardcore lockdown comp, because if you lose one of the bomb sites, you're not going to be able to retake it if you have just a hardcore lockdown comp. So you'll even lose defensive rounds just because you lose a bomb site and you can't retake. So I think that isn't so much of an issue.
I mean, I don't think Killjoy is going to be as bad on attack as we might be making it seem right now. We haven't touched on the fact that they gave her a boom bot basically as well, which is just, I mean, it's just unnecessary, really.
Well, it doesn't travel.
Her nade is going to be set nade potentials, right? You could throw the nade like a molly, and unless it and if you aren't able to shoot it right, you can just set it down and it just acts as like another smoke almost, because or a molly, it's already pretty much a molly, but it's a set molly that you will always be able to achieve.
The thing is, her boom bot, which I don't know if we're going to see it in
the
this
alarm
video.
bot.
Yeah,
they didn't really show any. I don't think they showed any examples of the boom bot.
It's not
they do in that leak one.
It's not a moving clearance ability. It's lay down and wait. It's a tripwire.
Yeah, it's a tripwire basically. So I don't really see how you would get value out of that on a team.
Oh, it doesn't move at all?
I don't think it moves.
I thought it moved in the...
No, look.
That's what I thought. I thought it moved too.
No, you set it down, it has an AoE, and it only gets activated when you walk inside the AoE.
So that's even worse for offense then, because you don't have a boom bot type of thing.
Yeah. So I feel like...
I see.
I feel like this agent is actually kind of garbo on attack. It's like... You would run it in the same kind of sense that you run the Cypher. You would set up in like positions where you wanted to make sure that people can't flank you. But as for offensive utility, she seems to have basically nothing.
Cypher seems more useful.
Yeah.
Just on the basis that he has
Cypher is 100% more useful because you have smokes and cameras. And his ult will tell you. I mean, the ult, I would say you could make it work both ways. But overall, Cypher's just like a better overall agent. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know what you would ever run Killjoy. You would pretty much only be forced to replace Cypher with Killjoy. So,
in conclusion, I think we're all going to hate playing with it and against it in our ranked games.
Yeah, that's certainly possible.
It remains to be seen, I'd say. I think it remains to be seen. I think if anything, especially at the highest levels, you're going to be, once you get to high MMR, you're going to hate having Killjoy on your team.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like,
okay.
This might be one of those scenarios where you just, you don't like to see it. Like, I played a ranked game last night for the first time in forever. Like, I lost my rank because I haven't played in so long. And wow, look at that. What the hell?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Wow.
That's pretty good. I like it.
Cool. Anyway, this I mean, I played a rank game last night to recalibrate my rank, and it was so painful because, I don't know, just people, I thought the players were going to be better, after I'd taken like 2-3 weeks off, and like the general game sense would have improved. But no, composition still didn't make sense. We had like a Viper and fucking a Breach, and I don't know. I'm not gonna complain about my rank games.
Your brainwaves were absolutely assaulted by the negative brainwaves of your teammates.
It doesn't even matter.
The alpha were cancelled out.
They got cancelled out.
Entirely.
I was trying to play the Sinatra style on Ascent when I was literally playing the Sova, and I was just buying an Odin every round.
Playing the meme.
Yeah. And they just never hit my sight, so I was constantly playing retake with an Odin, and it sucked.
It sounds like a problem more than a teammate problem, bro.
My teammates playing Viper and Breach while I'm playing with the Odin every round.
Speaking of rank, though,
oh yeah, I was about to say, yeah, we have the.
Speaking of rank, they're going to make some rank changes, so that a lot of people really upset with the current rank system that's in play, because they're like, it gives you no incentive to play a lot of it. There's no leaderboards or whatever. But they're making some changes, and it is the most convoluted shit I've ever seen.
You don't want the Triforce of ranked MMR experience? You don't want
what in the Lord's name am I looking at? You have to build up like. You're building up a triangle of your ranked experiences and play, and it's like, what is this? It's like some Westworld shit where you're building up the experiences of the hosts and trying to build it into AI. I don't know. Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's really weird.
I'm going to be honest. I tried to read this article. I closed that page. I don't know
really
what the hell is going on with this.
Confusing. It's just this article. The entire thing got graphic design is my passion. Is the problem here? It's like the article itself is pretty self-explanatory. The changes are pretty interesting. It's just everyone gets so. It's like they stare into the abyss of this triangle for too long and they get lost.
Yeah, the triangle is.
It is.
Can you? Avast, if you said it's not that confusing, can you correct me if I'm wrong here? The idea is that at the end of an act, your best 9 wins calculate your like overall rank. It's like your
so pretty much your best 9 wins. Yeah, it encompasses, but the most important like thing for your future rank seasons is your 9th best ranked win. Because they take that 9th best win, not your best win. So like pretty much the lowest of your wins, and say this is your skill level, your most definitive skill level. Right. This is what we know with confidence that you can achieve because it's the lowest of your best wins. And so that's going to weigh the most heavily as well, going into like your placements initially, is like they're going to try to place you initially around that level and use it for the basis of your starting placements. Is your 9th best win.
So that kind of makes sense, right?
The whole polynomial shit of this, everything gets like, it's really weird. But
I'm not, I think it's, from what I saw, I mean, I did look into it. I think it's fine. It's just hilarious how they tried to explain it on this. It's just out of control. But I think the idea is fine. I like it, but
yeah.
Was anyone asking for this though?
No.
Yes, actually, a lot of people are asking for a better rank system, something that, because they feel like there was no distinguishing way of how they could tell if they were close to a rank up. But now you know that it is your 9 best matches. Yeah. So you're basically working towards getting 9 concrete matches of what your goal is. So people were asking for a clearer rank system. Now, is this clearer? Up for debate. But
I mean, the visual system of it could show you, like, the whole point of it is that your triangle is supposed to like fill up with your wins. Then they have like an indicator based off the level, like the rank of the win, and it's supposed to slowly replace them out, like you're cycling out the bad ones, you know, like it's just like it's supposed to be a much more clear visual indicator. The problem is that it's just so convoluted at first look.
A really cool thing that I don't think they mentioned in this article, and it was only mentioned on a tweet from a dev. I think it was Morello again, but they mentioned that they are adding an API system for the top ranks. So for leaderboards, so people or websites or whatever, Blitz, I don't know, some third-party website like League does with op.gg. Like Overbuff, like, but a more apt comparison, because Riot has done this in League, is like op.gg, where you have this API where you can pull up the info. You can get a leaderboard of who are the best people. So you'll be able to sort who is the best, I don't know, Viper in the world, who is the best in the world in terms of win rates, a bunch of other statistics. There will be an actual leaderboard, which means that Sinatra, fucking Marv, Crashies, they won't have to keep making alt accounts trying to get Radiant on them, because there'll be something more to work towards, like an actual leaderboard system, which is Wasn't mentioned, but that is
the thing
that's what people wanted.
Yeah.
Like that's what people at the top ranks wanted.
We didn't mention exactly what everybody's been clamoring for.
Yeah,
Here it is.
So,
we got you this triangle though. Hey, you guys love Toblerone, right?
there you go. So Kurt's found it. We're launching a Valorant API and have some new policies to go along with it. Is that an article? I haven't actually read that. I just saw a tweet. Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Oh, cool. There you go.
I
So
think
new
it's a
API.
consistent problem with me hunting down Valorant stuff is I feel like I have to like mull through the archives and like the dusty tomes to find like all the stuff. Like it's really they're starting to work on like collating it. You know, they have like valor.gg and things like that. But it's really hard sometimes to find all the info in an easily accessible fashion.
Yeah. So the act goes into play on the 4th of August. Is that correct?
I believe.
Reading. Wait. Let's see. What does it say?
Can I get a fact check on that, please, Jamie? I'm pretty
here
sure
we
it's
go. This article's really interesting though, Bren, because I haven't read it at all, but the very first things it says are, here's what this data should not be used for. No personal profiles, scouting tools, etc., unless individual players choose to share their data. So the players would have to consent to the API data being used. So some kind of Riot would have to accept an application for you to use the API to create a leaderboard, and then would have to get the players somehow to like authorize that data. It
will be like Overwatch. There will be a setting that says, "Do you want to show your public data?" And
like
actually,
private profile
Dota has that as well. You can hide your information, and it's to stop third-party applications from pulling up all your stats and showcasing, here's what this person likes to play, here's the sites they like to play, here's the character they like to play, and giving you an advantage.
But look at number 2 as well. Look at point 2. It says, no direct substitutes for any in-game queue system. If your product directly competes with the incentives to play in any in-game queue, we're not going to provide resources to support it.
I mean, that sounds like pretty like classic Riot stuff. They don't have really third-party stuff for League, right? So I don't know. This is pretty in line with Riot.
Yeah, but I thought there was a chance, and a fairly big chance, because they've been copying so much from the CS style of running tournaments and that kind of stuff, that they would encourage organizations like FaceIt or whatever, ESEA, to have third-party matchmaking, because it offloads some of the responsibilities from them to create a great product and allows other companies to monetize their top level of play at the same time.
Now, hear me out on this. Some of you might agree, disagree. But I think what incentivizes a good game, a good healthy game on Twitch or like YouTube or things like that, is having an in-game system that like people enjoy watching people try and achieve in. Having FaceIt, having ESEA, these outside systems is complicated for a new viewer to watch, because they're like, what is that? Why does Global Elite not mean you're the best at the game? Well, no, it's actually these outside systems which dictate if you are the best. In League, they've got the Challenger system, right? Where you play the game and you are playing the game in the client. And if you make Challenger, you're really sick at the game. And that is what people like know as a metric. You want to keep it in the game. You want to keep the systems in the game, I think. And that's what they want to avoid with these third-party systems, because to a degree, like League of Legends pops off when people are like going on runs and tears. Like Tyler One, I don't watch League of Legends, but when he was on his road to Challenger and he was like, he wasn't even streaming his games. He was streaming them on a 5-minute delay using the client system so people couldn't stream snipe him. But it had like 50K views or something. It was crazy. I think that's what they kind of...
in-house is the most elegant solution.
Yeah, that's what they want.
It's definitely elegant, but is it actually achievable? Because unless you're going to... So, for example, FaceIt in CS, which is the most direct comparison in terms of the game itself, has to provide monetary values for people to take the top games seriously and to actually, you know, try their hardest in all of the games. But when you have... I feel like it isn't possible to create a matchmaking system that works that well in CS or Valorant compared to League. Because in League, there isn't like a difference particularly between your decision-making and your mechanics. Like your mechanics are your decision-making a lot of the time. Like the decisions that you're making and how you outplay your opponent is based on the decisions that you make. It's not based on some crazy, like you're not clicking faster than your opponent in like 99% of scenarios, I think. So whereas in CS, you have like a very, very large difference between that. You can have players that are just all aim, no brain and just run in and get kills all the time, and they'll they'll be able to get wins, but they're not going to be able to, they're not actually going to be good players. Whereas isn't like somebody who can perform at the top level in League much more likely, much more likely to actually be a good team player as well? You have solo like lane phases and all of that kind of stuff where you're not even having to interact with your team in a lot of scenarios. Like that's a really crucial part. You don't have that in games like CS or Valorant. I feel like it's a fool's errand to try and create a system that works as well in games that are so aim-based.
I feel like it's just kind of like that almost feels like semantics to me in a way, because also it's like, you can still design you can still design your system, like unless you're just admitting from the bat, like we will never be able to design a system for a top level Valorant that will ever be as good as third parties. But like, I don't think that's Riot's philosophy, not only because they want to have more control over the system, but because I think they truly believe that they will be able to build a better system than third parties. I think.
Why have we got some
I think that is
hot cat lady and demon boy on the right hand side?
What is this? The tier?
This is League, it looks like. This is like some League stuff. It's a fandom website.
Hold on. This is Kurt's trying to tell me what this is. This is available positions for each rank in each region of League. So this is the amount of slots available. So in Europe West, there's 4,000 in Masters, 700 in Grandmasters, and 300 in Challenger, I think that says. So these are sought after positions. This is what people are playing for. And honestly, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I don't watch a lot of League of Legends, but I think players get picked up into pro teams based on Challenger as well. So it's a system.
But what I'm saying is, I think that the skills are much more translatable from ranked play into team play. Whereas in a game like CS or in a game like
a much more individual basis.
Because I would say the opposite.
Really? I
would say the opposite, because I would say for League, like Tyler One's entire persona is like he's a one-trick legend where he just like obviously not so much anymore at times, but like he sort of just dominates the ladder on certain characters in League of Legends and like wakes his way up. And obviously there has to be some cooperation because that's League at its highest level. But I feel like it's far more likely to find a mechanical god in a CS or Valorant style game and hope to integrate them based off their ladder play than it is for League of Legends, where you can find someone that's like maybe where pretty much you're just hoping that you can find someone that's a mechanical legend and can work with the team. I feel like the skills are far more translatable in an FPS like attack shooter than it is in League.
I don't really agree, because I think that solo queue or even ranked gameplay in general can only ever in a FPS game judge your fragging ability most of the time. If you have somebody like, I don't know, like Existence or something, he isn't going to do anywhere near as well as someone who can just hit all of the heads, because the gameplay is way more puggy. No one's going for set executes. No one's going for like team play kind of stuff whatsoever in those kind of scenarios, because they just haven't built up the synergy with each other to be able to do that. Whereas in a game like League, you've got way more situations where you are like directly taking like lane matchups right from the beginning, and that is pretty similar to how you would be taking them in an actual competitive match.
Yeah, you're saying because it's more preordained that where the setups and how the game is meant to be played, whereas in a game like Valorant, it's a lot more fluid in which the ways they can be played. And
I just think the ranked experience is so different to matches. Yeah. Now, maybe that's just my pure ignorance of MOBAs. That absolutely could be true because I don't know them very well. But because when I think about this, I'm really trying to think like, how could Riot make a great ranked experience? And a leaderboard's a great model, because then if you make like, okay, the top 100 in North America, that's something that everyone's gunning for. It's a big prize at the end of it. It holds a lot of esteem or something like that. I feel like a lot of those players would be kind of trash at a pro level still, because they haven't developed any
they would get shots out. A lot of those players, I think that if they just introduce the leaderboard, the people on the top 100, top 500, people are going to look at them, people are going to scout them. They're going to try them out. They're going to at least give them a shot. And there are going to be players that end up being sick and are able to play at the pro level. I mean, the same, obviously, like if you do want to compare it to CS, they don't have an in-game ranking system. Nobody really cares if someone is global elite in CS. That means nothing. It is about playing the PUG system on third-party sites, but that's just because CS never introduced anything like a top 500. They don't really put much into the rank past global elite. So people check for people's PUG results on other sites, which is really just a substitute for an in-game leaderboard in the context of CS. I think that
Wyatt, does anyone, from your experience in CS, does anyone really pay attention to people being at the top of FPL outside of a few notable examples?
They do. Yeah. When people grind their way up to FPL, they give them looks and they'll notice. And the thing is as well, the players, I mean, you can tell if you're playing with somebody who actually has the potential to play pro, or if they really are just a pug star. And even still, those people get opportunities, not necessarily on like the upper echelon of teams, but they'll get opportunities in tier 2 to build up their team play skills. I just think that this has been a long wraparound conversation that kind of just brings it back to the start, which is everybody wants a top 500, and top 500 would be great for the ecosystem. Because right now, obviously at some point, you would imagine there's going to be a third-party league like ESEA or something where there are tiers, and then you will be able to see which players are performing.
Because
Maybe,
I
know.
don't think Riot will allow it personally. So they need to. That's kind of why there's so much emphasis on making sure this rank system is concrete.
Even if it's a Riot sanctioned tournament, I'm just saying there's going to be a way.
Mission series, right? So ESEA would be allowed to hold competition. I feel.
That's true as well. But there will be some, whether it's Riot or third party, there will be a league with divisions for players to rise to the top. I just think once they have the top 500, the ecosystem will be flowing, and everything will be good to go.
Let's move on to the tournaments that have been played recently. The WePlay Invitational. When was this? Because I mean, this was years ago, wasn't it?
July 12th to July 18th.
Okay,
it was like when we did our last episode 2 weeks ago, the very, very first games were just being played. But this is the most recent thing that's happened in Europe.
Yeah, and I think my major takeaway here was that G2 would dominate any team right now in the scene. That was my overarching takeaway. And also that the EU scene was significantly better in terms of just how they played compared to any other region. They had a much better understanding of setting up executes, plays, patience, discipline, that kind of style, which for some reason feels lost in NA. And I'm so shocked that it's... Well, I mean, I'm kind of skipping ahead because one of the topics is... pretty far ahead is NA lagging behind EU. But I mean, I think this is a good place to start when you compare the WePlay Invitational tournament. I don't know what you guys felt, but when I watched that tournament, I felt a significant difference already between EU and NA.
I think the upper echelon of EU is the upper echelon of the game.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Like specifically the top few EU. I mean, like when you're talking about G2, NIP, even Fish 1-2-3 at this point, they did a lot better than I thought they would in that tournament. To be honest, I thought the final was 100% going to be G2 NIP, but I was surprised to see Fish make it. That was very unexpected to me.
I remember this play from Korea. This is the Reddit Omen play because they were like, "Oh, he's in the high ground."
Nuts.
Yeah.
Dude, Korea's crazy.
It reminded me very Tins. It was a very Tins-like play to me, where they'll just like do some crazy like super aggro shit and then push through like a smoke, like Stewie in CS or something, and they'll just like make it work. Yeah, and I felt like it was just a nasty play. I do think though for EU, the one thing that's hard to rate about it is because also since one of our topics was like top 5 teams, so many teams have just been disbanding that were looking pretty good, like Fabricant and Party Parrots, because it's just so hard to find money because getting money out of EU orgs is like squeezing blood from a stone, like in its current environment.
It's really unfortunate.
It's just so hard.
To be honest, I think I said this previously, and I still stand by this actually, that I think because the opportunities and sponsorship opportunities are so much less in Europe, like there's a lot less money going around compared to NA, I feel like the competition is a lot harsher. Like I feel like you have to be really quite good, and it helps also that the EU CS scene is really quite good, like, and it always has been. It's been the dominant region for pretty much the entirety of CS. There's been some examples where NA has come out on top, like when C9 won the major. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that was like the one-time period where NA was dominant.
Well, Liquid had a really good run.
Liquid had a really good run not that long ago too. Yeah.
So there have been opportunities, but across the board, generally speaking, EU has been the dominant region when it comes to CS-like games. And you see this now in Valorant, and I think also the lack of sponsorship opportunities means that you've got this. I don't know, this forced evolution of teams. They have to adapt. They have to improve over one another. Otherwise, they're not going to get picked up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point. As for the tournament format of this, though, I just want to There've been both of the tournaments that were ran recently had some big obvious problems with them, and it's so weird to me that every time an esport starts up, this play from Hip was nasty.
Oh, God, yeah.
He just runs straight into him to grab the dismiss. It's filthy. But this tournament though had a Swiss system in it, which is normally really cool. But the teams only played 3 matches.
Yeah, it was a limited amount.
It was really dumb because Party Parrots ended up playing against G2 and Fish123, so they ended up 1 and 2. Whereas Need More DM lost their first game and then won the next 2 against FaZe and Null Pelnkey, so they ended up finishing in the top 4. When clearly, to anybody who was watching, G2, Fish123, Nip, and Party Parrots were the top 4 teams. Like there was a clear and obvious divide between the top 4 teams and the bottom 4 teams in this tournament. And the format of Swiss is good, but you need to play more games than just.
You need to play actual Swiss. You can't just throw the name on there, right? You can actually do the system.
That's not Swiss.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a Swiss system that says it's Swiss but just isn't. I've never seen that in a tournament before.
It just doesn't make any sense. Like the entire, like, why would you throw the name on here? And it's just not at all related.
Yeah,
it's just like it's a scam. It's just I've been scammed by WePlay.
I got it. As far as this, well, I don't want to get too far ahead of the tournament thing. One thing I will say though, I think I'm both not too alarmed, but I'm surprised and impressed by how often G2 loses the first map and then wins the series 2-1. Yeah. That has happened 7 times. So I think it's ridiculous
G2
how often they've done that.
Incredible though. Like in terms of the talent that's on that team, they look really good. They've got 2 very strong oppers in a game where opping is incredibly powerful right now. And Artis isn't even their primary opper. Like, that's mental that you don't have Artis as your primary opper. You got Mixwell, who's also very good, but this entire team is so well-rounded.
I just looked at the stat actually, Wyatt. They've played 12 best of 3s so far, and they've lost the first map in 5 of them. So and they've won at all of them.
That's nearly 50% of the time then.
But like almost 50% of the time they're dropping the first map. And when I watch G2, I am really impressed. They are a super team. They are dominant. Like I've been loving, I've watched all of the G2 games from the observer point of view, and then I've gone back and watched them all from either Mixwell or David P's point of view as well, because they stream them and you get to hear all of the team comms and like what they're planning in all of the rounds. So that's really helpful for someone trying to do analysis for the scene, because a lot of the time you can say, oh, well, they must have known X and X. And then you listen to the team comms and they either had like a different read on it or they didn't understand it. And so you get more of a feel of like what was really happening inside the team scenario. Mm-hmm. I think that this team has still got a couple of issues. Their attacking side is often pretty sloppy. Like there's a lot of times where they just try and force it on attack, which is pretty disappointing sometimes.
It's a recurring theme with like a lot of teams right now, though.
Yeah.
Like honestly, site pushes in general on attack are just a lot of teams, even the best ones in both regions, sort of just be like, okay, we're going in, dick swinging, and like that's like the push. And I feel like G2 is definitely like, I mean, because I think we had this discussion on Twitter, didn't we, Sideshow, a little bit, where you made a statement like, right now, like so many teams just lack the micro level decision making, you know, where they're just like two members are just like making a play together, you know, and they just understand exactly how it's going to happen, like how they want it to go down. And I feel like for a game, for esports in general, that's such like a strong skill no matter the game, because it's so much of like macro strategy is just like a bunch of players working together and sort of like, and just saying like, we're going to make this play and we're going to see what happens like off the peak when I use this, or we're going to like set it up in such a way. And then the macro sort of develops from what happens from all the micro there. And G2 is just really, really good at like, someone's gonna be like, okay, David, you're going to slow this, I'm going to peak. Or like, I'm going to flash here, we're going to swing wide, you know, we're going to fake. Like, it's just like 2 to 3 people at a time just making little set plays, and then it works into the wider goal.
Yeah, they're all big fraggers, but they're all really intelligent players. So if somebody says, hey, I want to peak this, they understand what utility to use without ever having pre-discussed it, I think. They just understand what utility they need to use to be able to set their teammates up for success. And so they've been a really fun team to watch. But this like split out system of communication does sometimes lead to, especially the attacking rounds, being pretty all over the place, because it's easy on defense because you know that if someone's coordinating an attacking piece, the rest of you are supposed to stay still basically and just like hold your ground. Whereas on attack, I feel like sometimes everybody's trying something and sometimes they just push blindly into an area. I think that's definitely an area that they can improve on. But Artis is also an incredible shot caller for the macro style. He's nuts. He's like the primary shot caller for the macro stuff, and he's so good.
If I was to ask you to create a top 10 list globally of players in the game right now, how many of them would be from G2?
Probably 5.
Yeah. Honestly,
right?
Like at least 4, I'd say.
At least 4.
Yeah. At least 4.
I completely agree with you guys as well when I was thinking about this, and I was like, it's kind of insane. Now, I mean, I think an interesting conversation to have as well is who we all think the best player in the world is. And this is a conversation me and Wyatt have been having for the past week. Just every time we see each other in the kitchen after a Valorant tournament, it's like...
I feel like it's a little early to make that.
You think so?
No,
I don't think so.
It's tens.
I would say that we
but...
still haven't seen any cross-regional play, really.
But you can make a good judgment.
We're speculating.
It's a huge speculation. It's a little bit clickbaity, but the point of it is you're kind of just you're judging based off of what you've seen from that individual and like I guess the competition they played against and their accomplishments thus far. I mean, I'm curious if you were to make this. If I'm to ask you to step out of your mind palace for 1 second and join me in my humble shack of speculation. What would you say is the best player in the world right now?
I already said it, so I'll just say I'm 100%. I think it's tens. I think he has, in terms of his rifling and opping, I think he is just god tier at both. He's incredibly versatile in those ways. His decision making, I think, might be the fastest in the game right now. When you see him in combat scenarios, when he's on Jett, his ability usage, decision making is quicker than anybody else's. He makes the right move at the fastest speed. And also there's something to be said about the rest of his team and him being like against all odds in so many scenarios. And he always comes out on top.
C9 has started building out, like, part of the reason C9 looks so rough, and it's also why I feel like it's so early to make the calls. Like, so many rosters have sort of just like been advancing, so like iterating so much recently, and I feel like C9 is like the key to that. Where like first it's Tins versus the world, then they get Relics, and they're like starting to get their little bit, and then they add Mitch, and I feel like it really starts clicking for them, even though they lose, at the end to Sentinels. Yeah. I think that like this is just such a fast time of iterative processes, and like teams don't even know what their roster is going to be.
It really must be said though that Tens is playing alongside players that very, very regularly get half to a third of his kills. And on a very regular basis. He does not have a secondary fragger on this team apart from maybe Relics, who's starting to
I would say Mitch performed pretty well, honestly, during during PAX, like especially in the grand final. Like not perfect, not great.
He was doing all right. Yeah,
he was. I would say that like the thing for C9 is that they've been building, instead of Tins having to just like drag 4 people behind him, Rock Lee style and drop the weights type of thing. Like I think like they've started adding people that are slowly getting there, and they're building their synergy, starting with Relics and Mitch.
But also, he's playing alongside a Sova player who's dropping like 10 frags a game.
Dude,
that's dreadful. He doesn't have like a partner to go in with.
Vice and I mean, this is so off topic, but if someone starts talking about Cloud9, I just go mental. I can't contain these hot takes. But really, he has 2 players on his team that are struggling to get above 10 frags in a game. And I'm not mad. I'm actually not mad at them having Shinobi on the team, because throughout his entire history in previous titles, he was always an in-game leader or a coach. So I'm not mad at them having if he's like, you can't actually hear his calls because Tens doesn't play with team audio when he's streaming these tournaments. But if he's like existence in-game leading and not getting kills, I'm okay with that. The problem is, there are a litany of problems with that team. We gotta talk about something else. I'm gonna lose my mind.
I though don't think it is Tens, because I think you can't argue against Artis, because not only does Artis combine a really good rifling and AWPing, which I don't I'm not going to say that he's better than TenZ at rifling and AWPing, but I would say that he's certainly up there. He's within the same kind of caliber, like arguably best AWPer within Europe when he was playing that as his primary role. And he's taken the rifling incredibly well as well. His ability usage and stuff in terms of his like empowering his team is also really good. And he puts up bonkers fragging. Not quite as bonkers as TenZ is, but he's really, really good at that. But the thing that pushes it over the edge for me for why Artis is the best in the world right now is because not only when you look at him play is he great, but he's never lost a best of 3 series, and he's the primary shot caller for his teams. Like he is, okay, he's not controlling the game in terms of like he's the puppet master making everyone else dance, but he's providing a lot of the macro calls in terms of rotations and where people should push. He has help from the rest of his team. He's not the solo guy, but he is the main dude who's making a lot of these reads and calls on the game. And to combine all of those skills into one player is absurd. And then when you partner him with someone like Mixwell, who's almost the TenZ of EU in terms of like his rifling and the heroes that he plays and stuff like that, then you've got like a god squad, like a real 1-2 punch that's phenomenal for G2.
I've asked you just decided not to take part in this conversation.
Well,
it's above
Josh,
you.
what do you want me to do? You want me to tell Uncle Egg is speaking? What did you want me to like jump in here? Wyatt was frothing about C9. Like we were having
you said you don't think it's applicable right now. You said it's not a proper conversation.
I don't think that. I think without cross-regional play, like I said, it's speculation, right? But who gets, I don't give a shit. We're gonna speculate, right? I'm kind of split. I'm kind of split myself because I think in like the right team environment, TenZ will be a better player than Artis. Because Josh actually hits my EU pick, which is Artis, followed closely by maybe Mixwell. But my NA pick is definitely TenZ because it like all the regions, but he's cracked out. You know, he's hit it. He's just like crazy. And he has really, really insane decision making, like just the quickness of it on top of his mechanics, right? But he just never. It just hasn't been the right team environment for me to make the definitive like, yeah, he's the best. Sure. I would say in the more complete package, Artis is there, like 100%. I think Artis is like the more complete package. But I feel like sometimes to be the best, it's not always about being the most complete. It's about being such a monumental force that you're like fucking Vesuvius when you explode and you bury a civilization. And TenZ is that if you put him in the right environment, I feel, and it just hasn't been achieved.
I would love to see TenZ play on a good team. It is phenomenal to me that TenZ plus the squad is making it to finals when they only have one map that they look competent on. To be fair, if you put him in any other kind of good team, surely Cloud9 dominates.
To be fair, Cloud9. I think in the last 2 tournaments, Cloud9 have had a very easy path to the finals. They've been playing against. I think the hardest team they've been playing against a lot of the time when they're making it to the finals has been TSM, and TSM have been.
I think
dropping
Immortals
recently.
They pop up against like a lot.
They actually didn't play against TSM in the last 2 tournaments. They played against Gen G in the first one, I think, and then they played against Immortals in this most recent one to make it to the finals.
They lost to Gen G in the previous one. Is what happened.
Yes. I think they beat them and then lost to them though, didn't they? Something like that.
I can't. All I know is they lost in the final
right now.
convincingly.
So how they played them early in? They played TSM, and then they beat TSM, and then they went to they lost. They actually didn't. If you're talking about the group stages, I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, no, they lost to them in the groups as well. So they
groups.
Yeah. Sorry, in the Pulse Invitational, they beat TSM 2-1, but then they lost to Gen G in the final. Yeah, you're right.
And then in the PAX, they got to play against Homeless, this was their first outing as a pug team.
And Immortals, who were shitting the bed.
Yeah, they really fell off hard the past 2 weeks. So
yeah, interesting.
I want to hop back on the EU.
Yeah, I was going to say on topic. I was about to drag us back onto it.
Yeah, we're crazy off topic here, but a team that I want to revisit is I want to talk some more about Fish and NIP, because this was the first time that we've seen either of these teams back at full strength, if you want to put it like that. Because NIP had one outing where they were kind of playing as Prodigy, and they just announced, they were basically playing as like a mix. And Fish 123 have only been playing in the past with Scream on Reyna, and they made this swap to Breach, and they've tried to like flesh out their team play style a little bit more. I was curious as to what you guys think about Fish 123, because they clearly have changed their style a lot from their original method of play, but they're a weird team now. They're super passive on the defenses, but they have good kind of crossfires and setups. And when I watch Scream, because I've been going back and watching a lot from Scream's point of view, because he's the guy that's been streaming it on Fish123, and I feel like he wastes his utility constantly on Breach, and still kind of plays a bit of a like loner kind of style. So I don't really.
But I mean, that's Scream, right?
Yeah,
that's like literally like part of the reason for his exit from CS was because he was like, I am the one tap master, you know, and like I don't know how to nade.
But they did have good performances in this tournament. They beat Party Pirates 2-1. They beat NIP 2-1. And they nearly, I mean, they didn't nearly beat NIP the first time around, but they took a map off NIP the first time around. So, I mean, they did pretty well here.
I felt like the wins they were getting, though, they were not clean wins. They were getting wins off the back of just, I mean, Scream had some sickening performances in that tournament. And I mean, just mostly on the basis of aim. Because I 100% agree with what you were saying about the utility. I thought even when he was using it, there were a lot of moments where when he was using his utility, like he would use his tremor and they would catch people. And then he just couldn't even capitalize on it because it was either like a solo. There was a time where he tremored and he hit 4 people with it and he got like whatever, like 2 kills. There was a guy, one of his teammates wasn't even ready for it, and then he just ran in after and died when they were unstunned. Like it was just odd timing. Wasn't using it effectively as a team.
But defend that. I say defend it. I'm going to try and put myself in Scream shoes, which I can do quite easily. You know, I feel like I'm on a similar level to him.
Yeah, you're a mechanical mastermind.
Yeah.
They call Bren the 30-tap master.
I think Breach is one of those characters that I think NA teams haven't been playing him as much because he had a lot of playtime early. You remember in the early competitive scene? Like,
I mean, everyone considered Breach to be like S tier initially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
he was like, oh my god, he's crazy. Like, his ult can deny plants, you know, he gets all this utility, he gets a replenishing stun that comes off cooldown every 30 seconds. He's got flashes that last the longest, you can do them from range. A crazy overtuned character. The issue with him is the pace of the game has increased since then. And Breach, I think, has struggled to find a kind of footing in a kind of meta that's developed where everything is very puggy, very loose, very fast. And when he's using his abilities, he has big wind downs, wind up, wind downs. When he's flashing, going in and out, it's hard to follow it up himself, right, from doing it. So I like to think when I watch Scream play, so I remember you made this comment, Josh, when you were talking about it, and I was watching it, and I think part of the reason is he is using his game sense to know when he can get away with using utility. He might not be able to capitalize off of it, but he knows he's not going to get punished for it. So he's throwing it out willy-nilly, trying to, and then maybe the fucking 12 moons will align, and suddenly there will be an opportunity to capitalize off of this utility that he's thrown out into the abyss. But I think he's just trying to be quite smart and not get caught with his trousers down, pulling out a flashbang, setting up a stun. Does that make sense?
I think that does make sense, but maybe then it's the wrong hero for Scream.
Yeah.
Because you look at a lot of the other Breach players in Europe, and you look at like Shadow Lols, who plays for Fabricant and is mainly on the AWP, and so he's sat passively quite a lot. And you look at SSK, who plays for Party Pirates, or played. I mean, both of those teams are dead, but they were alive recently. They are very fresh corpses for us to exhume. So, yeah, both of those players aren't really the big fraggers on their team. And so I think that they went for the Breach because they needed more utility than what the Reyna could provide. But I still think that this isn't the final form for Scream. I don't think this is the place where you necessarily want him to stay.
Yeah, I also think a team like Fish123, just to add on quickly, they're almost forced to find answers to a lot of the op-heavy styles that have been coming out recently. Definitely. Because they're a really rifle-heavy team, and one of the counters is long-range flashes, which Breach provides. You do kind of need that to a degree. So, but yeah, I mean that's a great point. That maybe this isn't the best hero for Scream.
I've been saying this to you when we were watching. I think that Scream should be playing Phoenix, and I think they should try to run a faster, more aggressive, kind of puggier style game. And I don't know why Scream hasn't been playing Phoenix ever before. Because I think that is a great agent for him. I
feel like they're still stuck in the box of like Breach is good, because it's not that Breach is bad necessarily, but it's very clear that they're jamming Scream into a box of being aggressive, and I also feel that like they're operating off like sort of, I coined this term somewhat recently for a different game, but I'm gonna use it here. We're still sort of seeing it as like meta inertia in a way, and I think Breach has fallen into that category for Scream because he's someone that started. Obviously we're still in the beginning of Valorant, but there was the proto beginning, the ooze, the primordial soup of Valorant, and Scream was sort of there initially, and Breach was really, really good. And I think that teams have started to realize that Breach, you have to play that much more passive style of Breach that Sideshow was talking about, because of the fact that teams have gotten so much better at just denying Breach his ability to follow up by just being better at utility and Crossfire, as everyone's gotten better. It's just a lot harder for Breach to just like, YOLO, I'm fucking putting my stump against the wall, I'm flashing and I'm running in and I'm going to get a kill. Like, it's way harder to do that.
I don't really think though that, I mean, there are many other issues with Fish123's roster on a theoretical basis. They did a great job of covering up this tournament, I think, through really good team play and like an understanding of how to hold areas. I think if you take that more puggy style, the only player that's going to benefit is Scream. And probably the other 4 players on their team are not going to benefit so much, because I don't think that this team has a wealth of firepower behind it. They have players that are naturally a bit more passive and want to play a more strategic, slow style. Apart from maybe Soulcast, you don't have another big fragger on this team that comes out very regularly with like aggressive plays. Yeah,
I think that they just need to, I say, clarify my meaning of the puggier style. I more so mean, I think they need to let Scream off the leash a little bit more and let him do his thing, and then they kind of play their game around him to an extent.
Phoenix fits that role way better than Breach.
More so than just being a cog in the machine. I think that if they let him play Phoenix and just play his game, he could dominate to a higher level than he was in terms of just raw fragging on Breach or Sage. And if they can just fill in the team play consistent game around him, then they could take their entire team to another level, because he is hindered a little bit by these agents that he's being, I don't know if he's being forced to play them or if he's trying to play them to fit into their machine. Yeah. But I don't think that is necessarily the optimal strategy for them as a team. So.
Yeah, it's interesting as well when they move on to Bind, because on Bind you want to be playing, at least in the current European meta, you want to be playing the Sova and the Raze. And that means that Scream can't really be playing the Breach. Like, Breach doesn't get played all that often unless you're playing a Sageless composition. So he moves over to the Sage in that scenario and has ended up playing the Sage for them, which is his original role when he first started playing Valorant. He was on the screen, on the Sage at the beginning. But when I look at this team, I feel like he should just take the Raze pretty much full time. If he was able to pick up that Raze role, the entry fragger, the AWPer, play more like Zipan, for example, when he was playing for Fabrican, that's a role where you can really impose your will upon a game. All of your utility is just set up to help get you frags and flush people into your sightlines. And if he can learn that hero and get good at it, that could be a massive boon for Fish123, because they can just move Soulcast over to the Sova full time. Link can stay on the Sage, and they've just got a sicko system.
I want to move this along.
I was about to say, we're doing the Scream hour over here.
Yeah, I mean, we're really breaking down the nuances of Scream. I want to talk about Big, B-I-G. I'm not talking Notorious, I'm talking the team. They picked up a couple of players. And you like that?
Just keep going.
So they picked up a couple of players. Now, Big was in the CS scene when I actually just stopped following CS, is when they got into it. But now they're opening up with a little Valorant team here. Some of these pickups, again, Josh, you're our EU correspondent. You dream of the motherland on a regular basis. Can you break down this pickup?
I don't know very much about about these 3 players they picked up at all.
I mean, I don't.
Well, I know that. Well, at the moment, Big is the #1 team in like this online era of CS, and I don't think that these players necessarily have that much to do with it. But I know that God B in the past was supposed to be their big IGL player, wasn't he? Wasn't he like the brains behind God B? Big?
Yeah, he's renowned as and IGL, basically, for a long time. He's been around CS, I don't know exactly how many years, but he's been around for a really long time. He's always been an in-game leader. When he was on the big team before, they were pretty solid EU team, like hanging around the edges of the top 10 usually. And he was just always around for that ability. So I think, I mean, look, he stopped playing CS for them, and if he wants to play Valorant, and if he has the same level of passion for strategizing and leadership in a new title, then it makes sense to me. He's experienced in the role. He has success.
These players have moved over from CS over to Valorant?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they feel there's like a salary increase involved with that? I feel like that seems almost impossible, even though some of the salaries initially have been kind of crazy.
Well, I mean, if nobody else has anything to add, I mean, there's a little article that we've got that's based on salaries. You know, we got a little thing here that basically goes into the discussions about the salaries. I haven't read this, so I don't know what this article is. But apparently, what is this? TEO.
The Esports Observer.
The Esports Observer.
And they're normally pretty good. Like their articles are normally pretty well sourced and looked into. They normally report on a lot of like business stuff behind the scenes, but this is like a bit of a business analysis, honestly, of Valorant so far.
And what was the conclusion? That it's a bubble?
Well, I mean, that remains to be seen as to how to address that point, though, a little bit at the beginning. The recent PAX Invitational saw 75,000 viewers.
Yeah, it almost hit 80.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
That's really good viewership.
The last milestone was like 50 for the Pulse, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty decent sized like jump.
That's like to the point where I am no longer believing it is 100% a bubble. Because before that, it seemed like the viewership could in no circumstances support the money involved. But it does seem like viewership is A, growing, and B, already at a pretty decent rate. And it's going kind of organically.
I was just going to say as well, on a note with the matches, viewership on YouTube is really good too. Like I don't know if anyone else has gotten in there recommended, like,
I always get sickest Valorant plays of XX, and I get like 20 different videos of someone just taking content.
But like those channels that have existed in CS for a while, but now in this, where they like basically cut down the matches to the fights and the good moments,
right?
Just shortening the matches. They're getting like 100K plus per match on some of the channels I'm seeing. Yeah,
wow. Valorant used to suck on YouTube. Like
it did.
At the beginning, it was
Valorant
horrible.
Was awful.
Yeah.
But maybe that makes sense, you know, because a lot of the viewership in CS
didn't have a lot of tournament, right? You're going to go for tournament style stuff.
Tournaments. So yeah, Uncle Egg, you got some work to do. You know, you got some opportunities here. I love the nickname Uncle Egg.
It's not a bubble too.
Well, no, it absolutely is.
Because like even with CS, which gets like crazy viewership, people still complain about salaries being too high for players, you know? And we've already got reports like, and as someone who's now technically under the umbrella of an organization that has a Valorant team, that since they signed, we are terrific with the NB team. I feel like even still, I've heard a lot of just crazy stories already about orgs being priced out of Valorant before this scene even began. You know?
So the quote that was in this article said, according to a variety of sources, the average salary for a full 5-player team in Valorant can range anywhere from $15,000 to over $25,000 a month, depending on the region. Now, I also saw, and this was posted to the Valorant subreddit. Oh, hello, black screen.
Wait, 25,000 like for the whole team a month?
For the whole team a month.
That's on the low end. I feel like that's kind of on the low end at points. For
right, so that's only $5,000 a month. That's like early Overwatch, not right at the beginning Overwatch salaries. This is obviously much larger, but it's like what if you remember when Rogue and Misfits were around and they were battling for the top two teams? That was the kind of the pricing. So what is that? That's end of 2016, beginning 2017 kind of Overwatch League, or like before Overwatch League.
I think that was right at the start of like right towards the beginning of like season 0 contenders type of stuff, you know, or maybe right before it even.
Yeah, early 2017. Yeah. So this is not as bonkers as we were led to believe. I've also heard things that were more bonkers, but maybe those sources, maybe this is talking more about like an average compared to the
average makes sense. If you take every team that isn't a select few, this amount makes sense.
I also want to point out that Ocelot, Carlos R., who is the G2 CEO, I think, tweeted about this article and said, this is bullshit, check your sources or something. And then I believe he deleted the tweet because I couldn't find it again. And so I think that he maybe misunderstood and thought that this article was reporting that players were getting 15 to 25K a month and didn't realize that that was whole teams getting 15 to 25K a month. Because, I mean, that is the difference between quite reasonable salaries, actually, if you think that there's long-term growth in this game, to absurd CSGO blown out of proportion kind of level salaries, like elite.
I've heard that some players are receiving CS:GO level salaries if they have the backing, like in terms of the following, the social media following. But that's purely just rumors, is what I've been, you know.
Nothing is like directly confirmed by any means, and I'm sure Ocelot over there was like he could feel his wallet screaming into the void.
Yeah, I mean, he's got more reasons
than
anyone to be like, what the fuck is this? You know, like he's a team
I've definitely heard a lot of different takes from it. Certain teams are paying tier 1 salaries, like CS tier 1 for certain,
but also
across the board. You know, certain teams though, very select.
Yeah, you say that Ocelot has a good reason to downplay the salaries, but a lot of the people that leak salaries are the agents or the players who are incentivized to pump those prices up as well. So, you know, there is a balance on both sides. Like you're more likely as an agent to report the salaries that are on the higher end because you want to make that seem like it's the norm to pressure these team owners into making it the norm.
Yeah, very true.
But interesting though, very interesting, because you've got to imagine that a team like FaZe, for example, who are just signing, you know, or Sentinels too, who are signing big names from CS plus big names like poaching them essentially from the Overwatch League, they've got to be shelling out the money compared to a team like, for example,
let's talk about FaZe.
Avast and Team Envy.
Maybe last point on the salary thing, but I was going to say, I mean, bringing up FaZe, lest we forget, they were paying Tfue $2,000 a month in Fortnite, and the numbers he was
really?
Dude, I was gonna say, you were talking about the early,
like the lawsuit is about, right? I believe with Tfue, it's like part of their whole lawsuit ongoing is part of the season around that.
Even when Fortnite, when the summer skirmishes were starting and Epic was supporting the tournaments, player salaries around then were like 3K average max. Like so, there were leaked Twitter DMs of popular players. Like in discussions for like 3,000 a month from good orgs. So.
Yeah. It's like, but obviously the expectations from when Tfue like sort of set his like that's part of the whole dispute. There was like he was signed on with the expectation of like the scene was sort of emerging, and it never went back and talked about those expectations again. You know, it was because which something that does happen with orgs where like you'll sign on someone that's a big name and sometimes you just never go back to reconsider where they're currently at. You sort of just let it be until they bring it up.
That's something that they need to include in the contract, like a renegotiation period after 3 months, 6 months, whatever.
Yeah, but obviously that's where like we get into the business of like that's where players and content creators and stuff need to be in there looking for their best interest and be knowledgeable because only a good nature orgs will obviously do that, but it's never in an org's best interest necessarily to do that, even if it might be slightly scummy.
Okay, well, I mean, let's talk about FaZe Clan then, because we've kind of moved on to that, and then we can drift into the PAX Invitational off of the back of it. But FaZe Clan have finally started to pick up more players, and it's not the players who I thought they would. I mean, about time that Marv got picked up. Marv is sick. Like,
that guy's nuts.
Yeah, he is so good.
He's really good.
So good.
I feel like every time we talked about FaZe, we just said they must pick up Marv, otherwise this team is a show, a disaster, a scam.
Yeah. When they announced Zachary first, I was losing it.
Yeah,
I mean, couldn't believe that was the first person they announced.
God bless him as well. Like I like Zachary, and I think that he got shat on in the Overwatch scene, but his tournament performances in Valorant have not been that great either.
Performance hasn't there just been one?
I think. Well, he was in he stood.
Was it the Overwatch tournament that he was in? Where he's representing
team before, right?
Team
it was
Overwatch?
a tournament before this.
But wasn't there just one tournament? That's what I mean. Like he only played in the T1 Nerd Street Gamers Valorant Showdown.
Okay. Was it that?
Yeah,
I thought it was
I'm checking. Yeah, it was only T1. Yeah, you're right.
Well, okay, but one tournament is not realistically enough to judge a player's performance off of. If we're doing that, we might as well just fucking.
Also, he wasn't like incredible all the time, but he definitely had good moments. You know, like it wasn't like an all like he wasn't like he showed up and is like, hey, give me the free money, I'm here to collect, and I'm not doing anything type of thing. It just was meh.
Yeah.
I don't want to write him off too early. It was just. I was
weird
shocked.
announcement
Yeah, it was weird
Marv,
to announce him first when then they also have Marv, who is signed, who's.
I mean, it's very
clearly
likely for me
crazy,
that it could be
so.
very possible that Marv could be one of those players that was like looking at other options and FaZe maybe had to like sweeten the deal, you know,
Maybe,
like because there's definitely a lot of competition for players right now that people are perceived as good.
It also comes down to what FaZe are trying to create, though, too. I feel like FaZe as an organization has prioritized picking up players that, all right, they want skilled players, but they want people with big brand recognition as well. Like that seems to be the FaZe model.
Which is pretty far away from that.
Yeah, Marv is not a big name. He's a big player, but he's not a big name.
I think he fits the
even
FaZe
Zachary
brand.
Zachary's a smaller name than you might expect, considering that he's an Overwatch League, tier 1 player. He's just been benched for a long time and wasn't even that popular when he was playing at tier 1 level.
Marv fits the FaZe brand though. Because I don't know if you've watched his stream, he speaks like a Toronto rapper. He's from Toronto.
Really?
He talks like I mean, I don't know. He gives me those kind of vibes.
They want the
funny.
swag with the player.
Yeah, I mean, Marv he's a swaggy kind of guy. He's definitely got it. So FaZe are gonna be looking for that. But there's also some rumored pickups as well for FaZe. Now the rumor is here that they're gonna be picking up a couple more Overwatch players. They're gonna be picking up Baby Bay and Raucus. Now Baby Bay, I could see the guy's recently retired. He's been playing a lot of Valorant recently. I know he was playing a lot of the 10-mans early on as well. Like I kind of see that happening. Raucus, I saw playing World of Warcraft last night at 2:00 in the morning in my guild.
Well, you have to remember that Raucus is a degen though.
That's true. Raucus actually he's been playing a lot with Marv as well.
With Marv and Corey both.
In ranked, Marv and Corey. Yeah, he's like with them. So that's kind of where I think these rumors. I think it was Asuna that leaked this in the ESPN
and
Twitch
Raucus
chat.
has previous connections to FaZe, right? He literally used to play for them too.
Yes, I forgot that he did. Yeah.
Have any of you guys seen Raucus play Valorant? I haven't watched him stream or watched people stream.
I don't think
him.
he streams
I saw that Reddit. So Asuna leaked this on the ESPN stream that it was going to be Baby Bay and Raucus. Jacob Wolf confirmed Baby Bay as something that he was about to report on, but said he couldn't confirm Raucus. But he thought it was likely. And then the Reddit comments afterwards were like, some people were like, Raucus, what the fuck? He's trash in the Overwatch League. And other people were saying that he's actually popped off.
He's actually not bad. Because when the news first broke, because I have an interest anyways, because, Corey, everyone likes Corey. Yeah. I have an interest anyways to see where FaZe was sort of going. And when the Raucus news started breaking too, I started to tune in even more to Corey's stream because they'd be queuing. And he's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
he's not someone you would expect based off his Overwatch history to be as good as he is at Valorant. Now, there's no guarantee. I'm not going to say that he's like a god gamer, right? He's not Corey, in terms of like making the jump from like Overwatch or even Sinatra as well, who's been, doing very well. I don't think he's that level necessarily right now, but we'll have to see what happens with him. But I would say, considering that if Zach can be picked up, Raucus definitely can be picked up and has like potential to be pretty good.
FaZe look to be an interest. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, what are they playing though? What do we think these guys are playing on the team? What are their agents?
Oh man, I mean, you can't get into it. I don't think.
And then further, I mean, you guys would know better than I, but like, who would be leading this team? Who's their caller?
Corey is going to be. I mean, do you mean in terms of IGLing?
Yes.
IGL would definitely not be Corey. He's more.
Probably
he's always
Raucus.
been a more.
Raucus is very vocal.
Raucus.
Raucus
Baby Bay, honestly.
Baby Bay is pretty
Baby
vocal.
Bay, yeah, that's a good.
Am I misremembering? Is Marv not vote? I feel like Marv is like.
I don't know.
Okay, I remember when I've tuned into him and I've heard him talk.
Well, I mean,
he's
ranked is completely different to.
True.
To a pro player environment.
What I worry about this. Oh, by the way, we should probably mention as well that indicates they're trying to pick up 5 players plus Jason R. And I saw floating around Reddit there was apparently some beef. I don't know how valid this stuff is. It was just a pure Reddit rumor, but it fits the facts, so I'm going to run with it. was that apparently Jason R had been picked up as a player and thought that he was the team captain. And FaZe decided that actually they didn't want like him to be building the team. They wanted to go in this different direction with Corey and his Overwatch his Overwatch co-players.
It might be fans.
His fans. Like Raucus is just like, please, Corey, pick me up. I'm still a big fan.
I think that's real. Who knows?
I think Jason R is just going to be a content creator for them now. But I think at one point he was picked up as a player.
Could always shift into a coaching role too.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, that's the other thing that's like super underdeveloped right now, obviously, is like coaches. And so maybe Jason R could feel confident enough to be a coach for them. But
The thing that I really worry about with this FaZe roster is that even if they can all frag, they have between them about, I don't know, I'd count it on your fingers how many years of CS experience they have. It's nothing compared to the other top teams in terms of just like understanding the fundamental concepts that all CS players know because they've been playing it for years. You talk to people like Hip, for example, and even I think Sinatra's been talking about this a bit, is that they've learned so much playing Valorant with other CS players because they just understand the game in a more intuitive sense, I suppose. Like there's certain things that just come really naturally to them because it's been drilled into them since they progressed through like all the tiers of CS. And this team is gonna, what are they all gonna be learning those things from Marv?
I mean, Baby technically was a CS player.
That's true, yeah.
So I don't think it's impossible that like, and also we're seeing sort of the neural elasticity of like Sentinel's example, where they're not a full CS roster by any means, even though they have CS players in there and they're doing pretty well, and like they're endemic players. So I like on top of the Overwatch players. So I do think that, and then the Apex Legends players of like Zoms. But I do think it's possible to have a team that is just filled with a lot of talent if you have some guiding forces, and it should be okay.
Yeah,
also, why Jason could be a coach because Jason already used to be a CS player. So
let's we don't have much time left, so I think the last topic. I don't think there's anything else to discuss after this. I mean upcoming tournaments, but let's briefly talk about the PAX Invitational that happened. This is the most recent tournament. It's fresh in my mind of how it went down. I was crying at some of the moments, not from tears of joy or amazement, but purely just from some of the gameplay that's going on. Some of the key takeaways for me, if we want to start here, I think has just been the disappointment of Immortals as a team. Because I've been expecting more from this squad. It feels like they are regressing a little bit.
I definitely agree with that they're regressing. And I think that one of the reasons is because they're still trying to figure out a spot for Stanny. JC Stanny was supposed to be their Cypher player, but then they ran Thief for a while, and now they've actually swapped Stanny over to the Sage, and Bjor has become their Cypher player. And they're also trying to play like double duelist comps and stuff like that don't really seem to fit their identity as a more structured team. At least I thought that was supposed to be their identity. But they did beat Gen G in group stage. They lost to Immortals. Sorry, they lost to Cloud9. And they didn't look great, but I don't think it's that horrific.
Cloud9, I don't think it's that horrific.
They've never fallen out of like, they've never been terrible for Immortals. They've just never seemed to have achieved what we feel is their destiny in a way.
I agree, but I do feel that out of the past two tournaments, finishing in quarterfinals twice feels like a letdown. You would think that in either of those, they would have been able to make at least the semis, since they were pretty consistently. I mean, if you were to rank the teams, I feel like they should be in your top 6 at least, right? You would think that they could have made it through in either this or the previous one, the Pulse, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I want to see more out of Immortals. I like to think that they've got like this deep playbook, and I think that's what they're working towards. But it's almost a similar situation to what some teams are going through when they're learning to run before they can walk. And this is a team that still needs to find their foundation before you can start layering up nuance to your roster.
For sure.
Realistically,
you talk about disappointment though. If you say disappointment and you look at the PAX Invitational, the first team that comes to mind is 100 Thieves.
Oh, I thought you were going to say T1.
No, I thought you were going to say absolutely TSM. Not TSM.
There's so many disappointments.
There were so many disappointments in North America.
100 Thieves, I had no expectations for.
Yeah, I didn't have any expectations either.
Yeah, 100 Thieves, I really, honestly, 100 Thieves as like in general has essentially been to me like just Hiko and the boys. Like everyone's just like there with Hiko, and like it's 100 Thieves is like lesser C9. It's off-brand C9 to me.
But
where they're just getting there.
What?
Hiko
I don't
hasn't
agree.
even played well.
No, I mean, but that's why it's off-brand, because it's similar, but it tastes bad.
But it's not the same. Similar, but it's really not the same. I think we had spoken about this a little bit, Josh, but I think Hiko's just on the wrong role on that team. I think they need to put Hiko on Cypher, call it a day. I don't think anyone on that team. I mean, I like Pride on Brimstone. I think he's pretty good.
Yeah,
I think he's been showing up consistently. But I think that the players on the team, they're just not on the right roles. I think
what a lazy system. Again, we were kind of being harsh on all of the NA teams for how they created these rosters to begin with. But what a lazy system to just take Hiko, replace him with a random player, and just plug in an amateur team and hope that you would get success.
Yep. Super lazy, isn't it?
But that's why I'm saying that, yeah, because that's why I feel like the hunt is still on to build these rosters. Like, you know, because on the opposite spectrum of teams that were really surprisingly good was, you know, C9 and Sentinels, who have just only gotten better and better, I think, from each tournament, because they finally started plugging in pieces that are just working together. I mean, Sentinel's been around forever now in terms of like in Valorant time on the geologic time scale. But C9, you know, now they've added Mitch, I think they're starting to find their path a bit. I think they're really starting to build that support structure around tens. And then you have to, and then looping back to FaZe, there's, you know, they had Def, which is now on Homeless. And Homeless popped off this tournament.
Homeless did really well, yeah. Yeah, it was a shame that we didn't get to see FaZe orchestrate a team in this tournament, because then we would have had like an actual tournament to really judge everyone's structure off. But yeah, it's funny that you think 100 Thieves was the biggest disappointment, Josh. Because for me, I had no expectations, and I was getting a little bit annoyed on Twitter at people saying, like, when they were looking at the groups, they were like, oh, Group A, the group of death, with 100 Thieves in it. And I was like, I mean,
I don't see how 100 Thieves and Team Ninja was the group of death.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. I think that was probably, like, outside of TSM, though, Homeless, Code 7, who are now built by gamers, and 100 Thieves, I didn't really know who would come out on top of those. But when you have an org the size of 100 Thieves, if you're putting up these kind of results, that is insanely disappointing.
I think they're disappointing in all of their esports, though, aren't they?
They just don't have a good esports division, really.
I think 100 Thieves doesn't have any particular. I think their LCS roster has been on the upswing after some changes, but they still have been disappointing overall.
Well, let's talk about the other disappointments from this tournament, because we all named different teams. So
TSM.
Let's do TSM.
Let's go on a TSM, bro.
TSM for sure.
Like, go on, Wyatt.
Okay,
you got a lot of pent-up aggression here. You need to let out.
Oh, no. I had to walk away from the TV like 40 times throughout this tournament. I was losing my mind watching these games. Yeah. But TSM, to me, I think at this point, they are just so one-dimensional. I think that Wardell is obviously really good. He's one of the most explosive players. He's incredible on Jett. And then he's also incredible on... he's just incredible on Jett. And then when he plays, he has no depth past that. Yeah. If he's not on Jett and opping, they're not going to win. And you saw that especially in the game that they just got actually crushed by Sentinels. Both maps, they started off down 4 rounds. Their economy was shattered, and he wasn't able to get ops and abilities. And they just completely fell apart. And past that, Drone looked like a consistent freak in the T1 tournament. And since then, he's just been all over the place. What's Drone going to do? Is he going to flash out of a smoke again? I mean, they're doing the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
Wardell needs to play more agents. Drone needs to play more agents. They need to mix up the strats, because just relying on those two guys to be amazing on 2 agents on every map you're not going to go very far.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think it's because we've literally watched this entire tournament, sat next to each other, and have already thought out and spoke about this process. But
group thing, good.
Yeah, I mean, but it comes down to me. I think when you look at a team like TSM, and watching them, I've always thought this actually, and people thought it was a hot take at the time because they were to be perceived as the best team in North America, but they've got this Fisher-Price playbook where they've got very limited in terms of the amount of strategies that they could employ. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they're pretty.
Fisher-Price even a brand in the US?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Well, you described it earlier, Bren, too, on Twitter. I think you said it was like the retirement home of CS.
Yeah. Because
that's
what. That's what it felt. It felt like at times. It's like the retirement home where Wardell is just surrounded by good players, but they feel so one-dimensional when they play. And in tournaments, it felt like they got away with murder because Wardell was an amazing opper. Teams weren't very good around playing around the ops and didn't know how to trade them out as well.
Still aren't in an A.
And it's still difficult for them. But then when Wardell got taken out, Sabrosa and Drone would step up. And this recent combination of every team in NA realistically getting better at handling ops because they're so potent, and also, unfortunately, Drone and Sabrosa not having a consistent games as they have previously, is just a recipe for disaster. And it just meant that TSM come out with the most disappointing tournament they've had.
Yeah, I've got to agree with everything you guys are saying, but except that I do think this was a particularly bad tournament for TSM. I don't think this is the new normal for them. I think this is much worse than they've played, even in terms of their just like trading and double peaking and stuff like that. I've got a video scheduled which should be coming out at basically the exact same time as this podcast, where I break down the Haven game where TSM played against Envy, because honestly, TSM were lucky to get past Team Envy in the quarterfinals. You look at that match, and it was 14-12 for them to win on Haven when they went down 3-9 in the first half. They had to like claw their way back into an overtime scenario when Team Envy weren't even playing that well either. And then it was 13-11 on Ascent. Both of those maps could have easily gone the other way, and we could be seeing TSM out in the quarters to Team Envy. And when I watched that match, and I've gone through and I've done a breakdown of it, they're just running into AWPs constantly, ego peaking and challenging, trying to just take raw aim duels. And I don't know whether like this tournament they just got in their own heads or something, but they didn't used to play that badly. Like they had some times where they go for like crazy peaks and Waddell would just win it, but they weren't just running in like lemmings constantly. I think this was a particularly bad tournament for them, and I think they'll rebound, even if they don't fix their larger issues of like a bad playbook and stuff like that. I think they'll rebound to the point where they'll still be able to play these top teams closely, even if they don't fix underlying issues. This was like particularly awful on all fronts from TSM.
They have enough talent where they should never be like that bad. As bad they were looking is the thing. As much as we make jokes about them, I don't think at any point in TSM's timeline should it be so bad that I feel like they should be struggling against like Immortals or Envy ever right now. Currently.
Well, here's the thing. I actually think
they go forward, but
I actually think in terms of stylistic differences, teams like TSM and to a lesser extent, Cloud9 are actually quite similar in that they have these star players that they focus around, and they have these supporting players around them. And Cloud9, I think, have been getting pretty better, actually. This tournament was a good showcase that they are steadily making improvements. Like, as much as we meme about Vice and Shinobi, I think that it wasn't TenZ dragging 100 pounds of weight. It was 50 pounds of weight.
I think Relics had like a pretty good, like watching the set plays, especially with Relics on Omen and how they synergize with TenZ a lot of times. It felt really good.
I don't want to claim that they're a super team, but I think they've made improvements, which is cool. But I think the team stylistically, teams like TSM and Cloud9 are going to suck against teams that are really disciplined and can play quite good fundamental gameplay, like Sentinels, like Gen G, and like hopefully Immortals.
Yeah, Gen G have been really good historically against Cloud9 in particular, because once you trade TenZ, the rest of the team can't frag, and then Gen G's just got way better fundamentals and strategy than Cloud9 does, at least on most of the maps.
I wish that Gen G had a different bracket in this tournament. Unfortunately, they played Sentinels in the first round in quarters, and it was a really close game, and that was the rematch of the finals of the previous tournament. So I wish they'd been in a different bracket.
Like Gen G Sentinels was probably what the finals would have been if you actually like had the best teams in the finals. Is that weird to say? Like, I know that Cloud9 definitely could have won. Cloud9 definitely could have won the grand final, but it was because of this horseshit rule where Haven got picked twice.
Yeah,
if you remove that, then there's very little chance that Cloud9 end up coming out with the win. They would have had to convert Ascent and Bind into victories, because there's no chance that they win on split.
Yeah, thank God that they ended up, at least Sentinels ended up winning the early rounds, early maps, because we got to see the TenZ Viper, which was amazing.
Oh God, that was horrendous. That was.
You don't love that one?
I can't really blame them though. I mean, can you blame them, Wyatt? They got the
well, it's a two-man show. Will the internet come back
to see that?
I don't know.
Are we still recording, Kurt? Okay, well,
we're still recording.
Think opinions.
The two people who have watched the tournaments together and came to the same conclusions a week ago are now going to tell you what our conclusions were. But on maps like Split, where you're much more limited in terms of what you can do as an opper on Jett, you need to pull something out like the TenZ Viper. You need to pull out some wacky shit that's going to throw some teams off at least, and maybe you can eke out a cheese win. I can understand where they're coming from with it. Is it the internet dead, Kurt? The internet just died? Well,
that's unfortunate. My thing with
hello?
Everyone's internet died?
Hello? We're back.
Are we back?
Nope.
It's catching up.
Hold on.
Will we return? Maybe.
We may. My last point about this.
Just us. I think it's just us
Hello?
because
Oh,
we are in the
hello?
house. I hear.
Hello?
Okay, I hear them now.
Oh, we're back.
Hello?
Okay.
Wait, we don't see you yet,
We
though.
can't see you, but we
don't
can.
see. It was only Josh and I for a second because we were the only two people not in your house. I think,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
the issue. So
Our internet cut out for a
No.
second.
My
Well,
entire internet died. Like I couldn't even launch web pages. So
Really?
I think
Oh,
the whole-
mine was
Your
fine.
internet
Mine was
died?
fine.
I wonder
Yeah,
if
my
it's just
internet
in LA
died.
then.
Yeah, an LA
something happened.
outage, dude. Solar flares or some shit.
Yep.
Who knows?
Solar flares.
anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
But we were kind of wrapping that Tens Viper discussion basically.
Yeah.
That's where we were.
The point we
left off.
made, just to catch you up, was that I think on a map like Split, where you can't get away with a lot of some players have been playing Jett on it, but I think that it is one of those maps where individual performances are quite limited because the map is so narrow, so choky. Utility usage is much more important, and with utility usage comes good teamwork, which Cloud9 kind of lack a little bit. So I can respect them trying to cheese out a win with Viper, trying to throw something unusual, maybe. But my God, that ult play when they were trying to execute onto A. We watched that live, and Wyatt had to take a break.
I was out of there. That was.
They didn't try anything else with it. They literally just ulted a site and didn't do anything else to distract.
That's really the problem with that one play encompasses the overall problem of him on Viper in that game, which is they didn't have strats for it. I mean, if that was the linchpin, that was their hidden strat, they weren't practicing that one just to bring it out in the tournament. And it was just, I mean, that showed to me that they didn't really know what they wanted.
In particular, and it's exacerbated a bit by C9 is like a very typical example of like outside of currently Sentinels and when Gingy are playing really well, which they have been, is that the executes in general are sort of just like, well, we're gonna throw this shit at the wall with an ult and maybe we'll get some frags and hopefully it works. Like there's never, I feel like a lot of the times there's just way less cleaner executions in how you want to set up your peaks and like your trades, and like we have guys holding site and how you push the site, how you use your utility, you get onto the site and deal with ops, because oh my God, NA VALORANT just loves running into like ops every day. I just feel like that's just like the tins on.
Here it is. Oh God, look at this.
They tried this twice. This I think was the first time, right?
But they're like, oh, they won't know what we're doing if we walk perfectly along the edge.
But imagine if you were, this is buffed and you could walk out of it, huh? Think about that one.
Oh my God.
I just love how there's no room on site either. Like you get onto site and you're relegated to a corner if you want to.
Did they use a single other piece of utility?
I don't know. I don't think so.
They used one. I don't think they smoked. They didn't smoke off the AWP. They didn't smoke heaven. They didn't try and push through the smoke at the same time as pushing through it. They tried to sneak 5 men through a fucking
yeah. That's bizarre.
Oh, it is so bizarre.
Anyway.
Well, okay. Anyhow, there was one more disappointment that was mentioned when we all said our disappointments.
It was a personal disappointment, which is far less relevant to actual meta disappointments. I feel like your disappointments are far more meta. Like your disappointments are like, man, TSM has been pretty good, but they looked really bad this tournament and stuff like that. Well, mine was like T1, just because I feel like T1 has just cratered so hard from where they used to be.
I have some interesting insider information. I say insider information, but I was doing some digging last night. I was in Sinatra's stream, and I was curious for what his point of view is, because obviously there's not many tournaments being ran. So I asked him, who do you think is the second best team in NA right now? Because obviously the first best team is going to be Sentinels. So I asked, who do you think the second best team is? And I got the least expected result. He said T1 as the second best team right now.
It's crazy because I've heard so many people talk about T1, like, and that's the lines with my information, where I've heard so many people say T1 is just like so good, like they're really good, but for some reason they've just been just shitting the bed repeatedly. It's just a full shit bed every time that they're getting ready to play. Recently, at least.
I feel like they got a little unlucky with running into a very hot homeless, because this homeless team did not perform anywhere near this level the next day on an individual basis.
Yeah.
You know, Superman, he went from dropping like 25 frags in some really fast games where he's like 30% of his team's killed.
And then the next day,
really well. The next day when he played against Cloud9, it's not like Cloud9 are a really structured team that shut him down or anything. I felt like he had space to be able to maneuver.
Superman 47 kills in their T1 match.
Yeah, and then you look at his performance against Cloud9, and he went 25 and 33.
Yeah.
Like it was, and Lasky, who was playing really well on the AWP too against T1, went 16-30.
Interesting.
So I don't know whether they were just hot against T1 or T1 did something wrong. I don't know. I didn't really glean much from this match other than looking like T1 were off a little bit and Homeless were hitting all their shots.
In my opinion, I was watching some of the early group stages on Skadoodle's stream, and in their calls and in their plays, they seem to be off in the thanks. They seem to be off in the fundamentals. Like there were a lot of moments in a lot of the rounds where someone would just like take an early peek and someone wasn't ready for the trade. People weren't communicating effectively, and they kept addressing it after rounds that they were losing. They were essentially just losing for basic fundamental reasons. They were losing rounds to lesser teams.
Which is so weird because they've been such a fundamental based team, I feel like as a roster, because it's a bunch of guys that like know how to play tack shooters. So like they should know like basic fundamental stuff of stop like corner checking the op and things like that.
They should. A little jiggle peek action going on.
Yeah, that's weird.
I want to shift this along because we don't really have much time left. So we're going to look towards the future now. And I think one thing to do this is there's one upcoming tournament. It's the FaZe Clan tournament, the Invitational. A lot of prize money, from what I know. A lot of invited teams. I think they're doing a qualification bracket for it as well. It's going to be super interesting because we get to see FaZe Clan actually play. Presumably, they're going to be playing in their own tournament.
They said that they will be playing, I think. I think they did say that.
So, I want to... Do we know the invited teams yet? If you scroll down, Kurt, does it... Oh, well... Does it say anything?
I don't think they have released that info yet, have they?
Well, they announced the first invited team on Twitter while we were doing this right now, actually, and it's TSM. So, but they didn't.
Right.
But I don't think they've determined all the teams.
Well, let's work under the assumption that all the good teams are going to be invited, or the perceived good teams.
Pretty much all the. I imagine all the good teams and all the signed teams as well. You know.
So I want to go around in a circle. I want everybody to say one storyline of what they are looking forward to this tournament, whether it's a team having a redemption arc, a team having a good showing, or maybe even a hot take. So we'll start with you, Avast. What do you want to see coming out of this tournament?
I want to see T1 actually live up to the Valorant Scrimbucks, the new Scrimbucks exchange that's not quite as regulated with the Valorant SEC as it is within Overwatch. But like, I want to see T1 actually perform to the level that I feel like everyone says they should be playing when their fundamentals should be that good. That's it. That's my storyline. Is I want to see T1 do something.
All right.
I think I would be looking at this, and I mean that this is the most obvious answer in the world, but I want to see what roster FaZe actually puts out, and I want to see if they're able to perform at the same kind of level they did previously. If you remember in their first ever tournament, they beat Sentinels. They actually looked like they had the fragging to be able to go against these top teams. They didn't have the built out like strats, and Sentinels were much worse back then than they are now. They've done a lot to develop, and you would expect FaZe to be lagging behind a little bit, but I want to see whether they actually look like a competent top team or whether they've invested too heavily in like Overwatch people and they end up looking worse in a lot of fundamental ways instead. I think there's a lot to discover here in terms of what their floor is and what their ceiling is too.
All right, Wyatt.
Mine would be, I'd like to see Genji make a deep run in this tournament. I want to see Genji remain consistent, really. I mean, they only went out early in the previous tournament because they played Sentinels in the quarterfinals, like we had said. I want to see Genji get a fair lined up bracket where they can make a deep run, hopefully play Sentinels again deep in the tournament. Because that's been, to me, I think the most interesting NA matches so far have both been the Sentinels Genji matches from the two previous tournaments, the grand finals and the quarters. So
yeah, I'd like to see
them play again.
I would have liked to have seen that as the grand finals as opposed to Sentinels Cloud9, but it is what it is. For me, I am looking forward to seeing if Immortals can stop being... In my mind, I perceive Immortals as like this gatekeeper team that kind of just blocks out a lot of the sort of... they're like the top 8 team and they're in 8th place. You know what I mean? Like hovering around that sort of section, keeping teams out from that, but sometimes they're not up to scratch. And they have a lot of close maps with some very good teams. And I feel like they're just a few inches away from getting a solid roster and eventually just upsetting people and going to the finals in some of these tournaments. So I want to see Immortals step up personally, looking at this tournament. Other than that, is there any other general overarching things that you're interested in?
I mean, TSM too, right? Like, I want to see if TSM actually bounce back from this, because I do think that there's, whenever we talk about any Overwatch, any esport, that shows you how deeply ingrained I am. Whenever we talk about any esport, there's some elements of like strats and performance, but there's also just form. And what form do you happen to be in on that day? And it varies from day to day. And I think the TSM were in particularly bad form for this previous tournament. And that's the kind of thing that can rebound really quickly. And you can either start hitting your shots, or you can just play better in terms of your fundamentals, which you always knew how to do. You just didn't do them on that day. I think that TSM should be able to bounce back. I don't really expect them to be the number one team, but I want them to at least look good, because TSM looking good is just important for the whole NA scene. They have to put up some kind of a challenge. Like, they were the team that was leading this meta for so long. If they just fall off the face of the earth, that's going to be an even worse thing for NA Valorant.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true, though. I will say I think that, like, it seems very clear that teams that are investing heavily in their structure early, like Sentinels, are pulling ahead, and even Gen G to a sense, because they've been together so long. And then C9 is starting to get there. So I feel like, honestly, to me, the narrative that Bren and I were talking about earlier about TSM has started to come true, because due to the advanced esports decrepitness of their players, I feel like at some point that what's happened here is that they as their muscles atrophy and turn to dust, but like I do think that it's more of the fact that this is a team that was very reliant on previous experience, and then Wardell's their X factor, and everyone else is just supporting like lots of veteran experience.
I don't know, like Drone and Sabrosa at the beginning of their time at the top were nuts as well. Like, they were popping off.
Well, that's beginning at the time of the top, right?
Yeah.
I think they've stagnated a lot. I think TSM, even though I think the real problem for them is that it's clear that compared to teams like Sentinels and compared to teams like Gen G and even C9 as they go forward, it seems like somewhere we all have to talk about like where a team wants to push itself, and are they trying to push themselves every day to evolve past just like me go in, me shoot, me use some utility. And I think this is where TSM needs to be moving forward, is thinking a lot more about like what is their identity, what is like the meta and the style they want to be playing, versus just we are Wardell +4 type of thing.
I also I didn't add this to the rundown, but I actually missed out the biggest big tournament that's coming up next is the European Mandatory Cup, which has all of the top EU teams playing in it, and it's in like 2 days time.
What's the format for it? Is it the half Swiss?
It's the Swiss cheese. It's like a Swiss system, but it has many holes in the format.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Oh no, there it is. It is on this. I thought I didn't see it on Valor.
I think it's a really large singular limb tournament.
Ooh, okay.
So it's like scary to go through, and you will probably get quite a bunch of upsets. But I think they're probably all BO3s. Oh no, the first round is BO1. Oh, wait a second. The first 2 rounds are BO1. So you're going to get a shit
really
ton
good
of
stuff.
Wait. There are a lot of teams in this, I think, right? Like,
there are a huge amount. The round of
28,
there's a round of 32 with like an infinite amount of teams. There's so many. So
you're going to get some big old upsets. And also, they're doing this dumb BO5 grand final again, where people are going to have to pick a map twice, which should only ever be used in double elim tournaments, where you are trying to give like one team an advantage. How do you're doing a knife round to decide who gets 2 map picks in a BO5? That's
there's 3 maps in the entire game, pretty much. Oh, not 3 maps, but rather 4. Yeah, 4 maps in the entire game. Like, you're literally determining a huge amount of the map picks. Like in terms of like what your strengths are as a team, because teams are already pretty favored on certain maps being on the roster.
Not to mention as well, you're putting in a best of 5 at the end of these days when these teams are playing. They're going to get fatigued if these grand finals are on the same day as the semi-finals. Like,
I'm not sure they are actually.
They've been actually doing a pretty good. The one boon I'll give Valorant tournaments is that on average, the grand finals, I think for some of their more recent ones, have been separate days.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh.
I think so, if I'm remembering correctly. I mean, it could just be my poo-poo brain. Like,
you do have a pretty big poo-poo brain.
Yeah.
So.
I think this is also going to be the last hurrah of Fabricant and Party Pirates, unless they've already declined the invite.
I thought Fabricant already disbanded for sure.
I think they've announced it, but I don't know whether they're still playing in this cup.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Fabricant is not playing, but Party Pirates might be.
Right. I see.
Well, that's going to be interesting. And when are these tournaments taking place?
The EU one is between July 31st, which is this Friday. It's basically this weekend. And then the next one, the FaZe Invitational, is basically the weekend. Well, it's not the weekend afterwards. It's the week afterwards. So it's during the weekday.
During the week?
There is actually an NA tournament this weekend, like this 30 Bomb Summer Cup, which has a really small prize pool and somehow got all the top teams. I don't know.
Oh, really?
It's like a 3K tournament that has every team in it.
It's a 5K, so it's a little bit
Wait,
more.
are they
but
actually playing in this, though? Or have they just announced it?
I mean, it looks like it.
It looks like, but it's this weekend. Yeah, first place is $3,000. It has every top team, and it's weird.
Sure.
It looks like, from what I'm seeing, I tried to look into this, but it looks like there's 14 teams, and the qualifying teams start in the lower bracket. And then the top 8 start in the upper bracket quarterfinals. That's what it looks like from what I'm seeing.
Really make it difficult for those amateur teams to get in.
Yeah.
Bonkers setup. Okay.
So just
technically the only piece of news is that they invited the teams. I don't know if they've been confirmed, but I'm assuming
they just invited them.
Yeah, they've just been invited. They're just like, well, these are the teams participating because we invited them. You know.
I guess we'll see. But there'll be some type of
for $5,000. Yeah,
clown fiesta this
weekend.
Give
away anything?
It seems really weird to me that most of these teams will participate, considering that the FaZe tournament is just right around the corner.
Why would you participate in that? Yeah, I don't know.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
Other than just by gamers or something, why would you be here?
I gotta wrap this up because selfish reasons I gotta go. But also, I think we've ran out of topics, so it's a good place to end it. To be honest with you. We don't really end podcasts properly. How do normal people end podcasts?
I think they ask people to like and subscribe or something.
Generally say see you on the next one as well.
Like and subscribe. See you on the next Clutch or Kick.
But you're not going to be on the next one though, Avast. So why are you saying that?
I won't be here. But I'm telling you how the next one should be.
Everybody go subscribe with Twitch Primes to twitch.tv/Avast.
Yep, that's right.
And thanks for coming on, Avast. What is your first name?
Connor. What's so funny about that?
I love that Bren didn't know it. Bren didn't know what your
I
name
forgot your
was.
name. I knew it was out there somewhere, but I just forgotten your first name. Yeah.
Your name is I remembered that immediately, so I can't believe you would remember mine.
Hi, Connor. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. This high octane environment.
All right. Yeah. Wrap it up. Press the button, please. Thank you.